Hi, I am Tricia Bryan with True Justice International. I am our director of our Willforce program, and we are going to be talking today about human trafficking, what it is, what it looks like, warning signs that you can be looking for, and how to protect yourselves. So just to give you a little bit about who we are, True Justice is a local organization out of New Bern. We work in a lot of different areas. One is our Grace Projects. We have a housing restoration home for women who have been trafficked, and so we provide all of their counseling, their education needs, their health needs, their mental health needs. We help them get work study and help them get whatever they need in order to live on the other side of what they've gone through to have healthy, thriving lives. We also have our Pearl Ministry. We have pearl bracelets and different jewelry that we have and things that are made by the women survivors in our home. In that ministry, we have those bracelets in 33 different countries. We have our Voice It that works with legislation and law. Our Orphans Cry works with helping to get adopted, aging out orphans to help them find homes and families. And then we have our Willforce initiative, which is what I do, and that is our education and awareness. So we go out into the community to help raise awareness, help raise education on what is human trafficking. We have clubs within the different schools where youth can get involved and raise awareness within their schools and within their communities. So what is human trafficking? When I ask this question, I usually get responses from kidnapping to slavery to rape to lots of different answers. So we're really going to take this apart and look at what is human trafficking and what does it look like. Human trafficking is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, obtaining of a person for the purpose of either commercial sex or servitude. Is really what kind of falls underneath that definition of human trafficking. But when we look at the big umbrella, there's actually 3 types of trafficking. There is organ trafficking. There is a black market where organs are bought and sold. It does happen. It is out there. And that does fall under that terminology of human trafficking. We have labor trafficking. And what we typically see with labor trafficking is it is typically something that happens with people who are coming to this country from somewhere else. They don't speak our language, so that puts them at a vulnerability. Sometimes they can have a visa that is connected to a person who's helped him get here. Indentured servants, that's a terminology we kind of learned in our history classes, but we still hear about indentured servants today. People that someone has paid for their fare to get to this country, have brought them here, helped them get their visas or whatever, and then they get here, but then they're forced to pay off that debt. And the amount of money that they make, if they make any, is very little, and that debt just never seems to go away. Typically then they're offered a place to maybe stay, that's usually in squalor, but they have a home, so then they have to pay for rent and things, and so that debt never goes away, so we see servitude in that way. We see servitude where people are brought to this country and forced to be in-home servitude, taking care of a family and put into slavery that way. We also see it a lot in the farm industries, in the hotel industries, a lot within our Hispanic cultures where there is a lot of pride in a job well done and pride in their hard work. They may be getting a little bit of money, and so what little money they do get, they don't want to jeopardize, because that usually is going back to support family in their home country and things like that. So typically with the labor trafficking, we typically see that that is a foreign person in this country. We don't see it a whole lot with somebody who is American born and bred, unless that person may have a cognitive disability. We do see sometimes that they're taken advantage of that way. Another way we see labor trafficking is in some of the different massage parlors, things like that. That can also be an area where people are trafficked through labor and sex, actually. And then we look at sex trafficking, and that's what we're going to focus on the most, because sex trafficking is where there is constant recruitment. We are seeing that people are constantly recruited into this. One statistic I saw said about every 30 seconds someone is recruited into sex trafficking. So that is something we're looking at, especially in talking to your youth, our teenagers, and our middle schoolers. They are the prime targets, prime age for someone to be recruited into the sex trafficking world. So to look at that, what does that mean? What does that look like? When you talk about that recruitment into sex trafficking, when it comes to trying a case, the DA will have to show forced fraud or coercion, that the person was forced into it, fraudulently brought into it, or coerced into the trafficking situation. If it is a minor, someone under the age of 18, that forced fraud and coercion are automatically there because they're legally not of an age of consent. So they don't have to show that forced fraud and coercion. So when we look at this, what does this look like? That commercial sex act means that money has to change place. So typically when we talk commercial, there's something that is exchanging of value when the sex act is done. It can be money, it could be drugs, it could be something to that extent. But that's what makes it commercial, is that exchange for something. And usually what we see is that coercion that happens a lot of times. It is, I need a ride to work. Somebody's down on their luck, they need a ride to work. Or I'm going to lose my job, and if I don't have my job, then I can't pay my bills. And the person will say, well, I'll give you a ride to work, but if I'm going to give you a ride, you're going to do this for me to earn your keep or to pay for your gas. Or I need a place to stay. I don't have any place to put my head. My parents have kicked me out of the house. I've had a fight, whatever it might be. I need a bed, I need a place to stay, or I'm homeless, or whatever it might be. Well, you can stay here. I've got a bed for you, but you're going to do this for me. One of the most common ways we see this is in a relationship. Well, if you really loved me, I love you, and if you really loved me, you would do this for me. And we see that manipulation very often. One of the things that you need to understand in the human trafficking is it can be pictures, and that's something that a lot of teenagers don't think about. This person's taking these sexy naked pictures of me. Well, I was just doing that because I wanted to. But if they're selling those pictures for money, they're trafficking you. So it can be pictures, it could be video, or it can be any form of a sex act, which will make that human trafficking, which make that commercial sex act. So when we look at numbers, when we look at what does this industry really look like, is it really something I need to know about? Is it really something that's affecting America? Does it happen here? The truth of the matter is human trafficking is a $150 billion industry. Most of us don't live in the millions and billions of dollars, but in all the rooms that I've talked to and all the places I talk, one thing that comes out is I was just at Disney recently with my family, and while we were there, we were looking at all of the people that are there from all across the world, how packed it is, how busy it is, and my family and I were sitting and talking just about all the Disney movies that are there and just all the detail that goes into making those parks and all the little details that they put into every part of Disney. All the costumes that are there and all the toys and just the amount of people. And so I thought, how much money does Disney make a year? And in looking up, it's $62 billion a year. So when we look at this number, human trafficking makes almost 3 times what Disney makes on a yearly basis. And when I talk to a room, pretty much every person in that room has been touched by Disney in some way, shape, or form. And human trafficking is making 3 times what Disney makes. So that gives you an idea of just the global bigness of this industry. It's only second to drugs, and it is growing exponentially. In 2012, it was a $50 billion industry. 2017, it's a $150 billion industry. You're talking $100 billion growth in a very, very short period of time. A lot of things factor into that. Social media is a huge factor into that. When we look at where the process has come to be able to purchase a prostitute from where it used to be, it is all online now. It is all on social media. You can go in, you can pick who you want to buy, you can pick what you want to buy, you can pick if you have a fetish. You can put that all in, you do it all online, you pay for it online, and you can discreetly go meet with the person that you have purchased. And it's very easy to do without getting caught. And we see this. And so, that's one reason why it's growing, because the social media and the internet has opened up the world to make it much easier. The other thing with social media is it opened up the world for predators to constantly groom and recruit people into social media. With our apps and all the things that are out there, with our gaming systems and everything that can be online, and we can constantly interact with people, we are seeing that predators have access to recruits 24/7. And so they are constantly having access to that. The other thing that we see that causes that $150 billion to just be so big is when you look at how often you can sell, a certain mixture of drugs. You make your batch of drugs, and that batch of drugs can only be sold, so many times. You can only sell a pack of drugs one time. You can't take it back from the person who bought it from you and make them buy it again. You can only sell it one time. So you have to continue to make more, produce more. Same thing with illegal weapons. You have to acquire more weapons to continue to sell weapons. But if you're selling a person, you can sell that same person over and over and over and over and over again in a single day time. On average, it's about 10 times a day, 6 days a week, is what most girls who are being trafficked, boys who are being trafficked, that's about how often they're expected to service somebody. It can be more, it can be less, depending on the situation. But you think about having something that you can sell 10 times a day. And then if you have 5 somethings that you can sell 10 times a day, the way that that money can process, it grows very quickly. The other thing that is so appealing about this industry that makes it grow as quick as it is it's very easy. If you get pulled over and you have drugs in your car, you're going to get arrested. If you've got illegal weapons in your car, you're going to get arrested. But if you're driving around in your car with some people in your car, even if the police suspect something, it's very difficult to prosecute or to do anything because those victims that are in the car are not going to speak up. They have been threatened. Typically, they've been threatened with if they've got younger siblings. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to get your younger sibling and I'll do to them what I've done to you. This is what time your siblings get off of work or what time they get off the bus. This is the route your parents take to get home, and this is what time they pull into the driveway every night. So if you don't do what I tell you to do, I will kill your parents. And they have seen the violence be acted out. So those threats are not real. They are very real. And so they're not going to say anything. The other part of that is typically they have done something illegal. They know prostitution is illegal. They've been forced to be with somebody for money, and they know that that is against the law. So they've been taught to fear the police. They've been taught that the police are just going to arrest them. And in some cases, they've been taking advantage of those people who are supposed to protect them, have re-victimized them. And so it really is one of those scenarios where there's a lot of factors that go into that growing number, and that number has continued to grow. The 40 million is the amount of people that are enslaved in trafficking globally. When I started doing this about 3.5 years ago, that number was 30 million. It has jumped in 10 million in about 3.5 years. So this business is growing constantly. The 300,000 are amount of kids that are trafficked in America on a yearly basis. And those are not kids that are brought here from another country. Those are not foreign kids. Those are American children being trafficked in America. And that statistic is from 18 and under, is what we see that number showing. So what does this typically look like? Why am I talking to y'all about this? Why are you having to learn about this? North Carolina is typically in the top 10. We have regularly been in the top 10 of the 50 states for reported cases on human trafficking. There's some factors that factor into that. One is, as a state, we are really doing a good job of working to get human trafficking defined as human trafficking. So more cases are being tried as human trafficking cases. We have done a lot of stuff collaboratively as a state. We have a lot more reporting areas. We have a lot more agencies that are educated and aware and know what human trafficking is. And all of those areas collaborating and working together, we are doing a lot in this state to really battle this. But the truth of the matter is, we've got the I-95 corridor. We have a lot of military bases that are also a big area. Charlotte is one of the biggest cities for human trafficking. And then we have a lot of resort areas with our beach areas, with the mountain areas, and those transient areas, those transient populations make it easier to traffic. So when we look at this, the average age for someone to get into trafficking is between 12 and 14 years old. Those are your middle schools. When you look at your middle school age, that's when that independence starts to come. We see more interest in boys. We see more interest in that opposite sex, or more boys are more interested in girls, and girls are more interested in boys. It's a very awkward stage for most kids. Most kids are struggling with just body changes and puberty and who they're going to be and who their friends are going to be. And, there's a whole lot that happens in that age range of insecurity and just kind of figuring out who they are, which goes hand in hand with a little bit more independence. That's typically when they'll get those cell phones and they'll have access to those kinds of things. And so that is an age where they're very easily preyed upon. They're very easily going to believe somebody who's going to come in and tell them how pretty they are or how handsome they are and make them feel really good about themselves. And predators know this. They know that it's an awkward age. They know it's a vulnerable age. And it doesn't take a whole lot for a predator to come in and make that kid feel really good about themselves. And that's one of those things that we just need to look at as we look at our middle school kids and what they're dealing with. The other thing to know is a lot of times people have seen the movie Taken, and they have in this brain, that if a person is trafficked, they have to be taken and they have to be kidnapped, and, they're taken from their family. And the truth of the matter is, it does happen, but it's only about 10% of the cases where we actually have somebody who is kidnapped off the streets. Most of these cases have some form of a relational that happens, whether it's an older person that comes in and grooms. It can be familial, and that is something that we do see in our area, the familial trafficking, parents, brothers, cousins, aunt and uncles, and it's all wrapped up into that opioid issues that we have. Family members are selling their family members in order to get their drug fix, and so that's something we do see in this area. And understand that just because someone is being trafficked doesn't mean they have to be away from home. We've had cases where it was the high school football player who was trafficking his classmates. And so these kids would be home at night, they would eat dinner with their family, and then when their parents would go to bed, they would sneak out and meet their trafficker, do what they had to do, and they would sneak back in by morning and go to school the next day. So it's not always somebody who's left home. We've had a case of somebody who was trafficked at a racetrack, and so during racing season, her parents thought she was going to help a neighbor run a food truck. What she didn't realize is that she was being trafficked out of that food truck. So during racing season, weekends and things like that, she would be trafficked, but then normal life throughout the week. So just having that idea that it's not just something that happens in foreign countries. The police typically say if you have a hotel in your town, you have a trafficking problem in your area. And I will tell you that we have had multiple cases here in New Bern. There have been arrests in New Bern, there have been raids in New Bern. So it's not just something in foreign countries, it is here, it is local. So as we talk about this, what makes somebody at risk? What makes a youth at risk? And I have, in this PowerPoint you can see what makes somebody at risk are things that affect every teenager. They all feel insecure at some point in time or another. They all feel like they don't fit in at some point in time or another. They all have access to cell phones. They may walk to the bus. They may, walk around the neighborhood or walk with friends different places. They all like to have things. They like to go shopping. They like to get new stuff. They want to fit in with the crowd. They want to have those, new popular things and look nice. They may want romantic relationships. They may wish they had a boyfriend or a girlfriend or had, that romantic relationship. They fight with their parents. I don't know that there's a youth out there that has never fought with their parents. They wish they had more independence. They wish they could be more independent and have more time on their own and, spread those wings. And those are all normal feelings that our youth feel, but those are also the same vulnerabilities that our predators will use. So when you look at our youth today and the generation that has been raised, that we're raising, they are all about social media. And they post everything about their day on social media. They post when they've had a good day. They've posted when they, all of those things. So a predator just waits. He waits or she waits until they see that post where, today was just an awful day and, I just felt like nobody likes me or whatever it might be. My mother just never lets me do anything and I can't ever go to these parties. And so they'll come in and they'll start to talk to them and they will start to have conversation with them and they will start to interact with them. And what you need to know as parents, in the process of doing this, when I talk to teenagers and when I ask a room full of teenagers, how long does it take for a stranger online that you meet to become your friend? I get answers anywhere from a minute to 10 minutes to a week to a day to a month to a couple months. Very rarely is it a month or couple months. It's usually within the week or less time period that stranger is a friend to them. And what you need to understand as parents and have these conversations and as kids to have these conversations with your kids are, the reality is that a trafficker could make about $150,000 to $300,000 per kid that they recruit. They are willing to take time to lay that groundwork. It's called a grooming process, and they will groom our kids. They will groom them for a long time. And so what we need to know as parents is stranger danger no longer works with this society because all of the social media apps that are out there all talk about, the majority of them, with meeting strangers, with meeting people they don't know. There's some apps out there where they actually get extra points and they get extra stuff for looking on strangers' profiles and commenting and connecting with people they don't know. That's the world they're growing up in. So we have to know that these people that are online are their friends, and they truly believe that they are their friend. So when that friend says to them in 6 months or 8 months or 9 months, hey, I'm going to be in New Bern, I would love to meet you in person, it does not even cross their mind that it could be a dangerous situation. They're going to go in a heartbeat, and you're going to have your child gone because they don't understand how predators work. So just really having those conversations with your kids. I can tell you that I am the mom of 3 girls. I have an 18-year-old, I have a 16-year-old, and I have an 11-year-old. And I can tell you both my 16 and 18-year-old have been approached online by predators. So it's happening. It's not just something that I'm telling you it's happened. We have experienced it personally. So they're out there and they are after your kids. So what to look for? And this is usually something I put out there for the kids because in all honesty, friends are going to be the first person to know if something is going on with their friend. They're going to talk to their girlfriends or guy friends way before they ever talk to a teacher, way before a parent ever has a clue what's going on. Their friends are going to know. And so some things that I put out there, what to look for. Unexplained marks, unexplained bruises. If a friend starts to cut, they were never a cutter before, now they're cutting. A relationship, that is a huge one. One of the biggest ways we see, especially with girls that are trafficked, is an older guy is going to start paying attention to that younger girl. They're going to make them feel like a princess. They're going to make them feel so special. They are going to spend money on them. So that friend is going to be the first person who's first going to know about this guy, know information about him. But then that friend's also going to be the first person to know if this guy buys something, buys a new purse, buys a new dress or jacket or shoes or spends money, because she's going to come to school and say, look at this purse that he bought me. Don't tell anybody, but he bought me this purse. Isn't it beautiful? And be so excited and giddy about this new boyfriend. They're the ones who are going to see that. Some other things to look at is, being secretive. The friend is going to be the one who's going to cover when the girl wants to go away for a weekend with her boyfriend. And that's usually one of the things that we see as this trafficking will unfold. A lot of times the first part of it will introduce them to taking them to a strip club. That's usually how they will ease them into the full trafficking is, well, you could dance. Have you ever tried dancing? You could dance. You can make money this way. And usually that is preempted with, I'm going to lose my house, or I'm going to lose my car, or I'm going to lose this, or if you really loved me, you would help me, and, well, you could dance. And so usually they'll start with a strip club, and then eventually they'll move to full-fledged trafficking. So that is one of the big ways we see it. And that a lot of times coincides with, can you cover for me, say I'm with you this weekend, if my mom calls, just three-way call me or message me and I'll call her, and can you cover for me so I can go away with so-and-so for this weekend and she doesn't know. So those are some things we see. If there's a new divorce in the family or a change in the family, those are things that cause a lot of uncertainty in a child's life. And they have no control over that. They have no control if their parents are going to stay together, if their parents divorce, who their parents decide to date. And so that's one time where we a lot of times will see children be very extremely vulnerable because their whole world has been turned upside down. And that is a time where a predator can very easily come in. So, just knowing that and being aware of that. If a child's, if there's been a death in the family, if there's been something that's big that has happened within the family, those are times when predators can definitely come in because it just has created a lot of uncertainty and dysfunction within the family. So these are all things that will show who is at risk, things that can, if we're seeing a lot of these on the list, chances are there is something happening there and it needs to get reported. So when we look at who can be a trafficker or a pimp, and the honest answer is there is no socioeconomic status that says I'm a trafficker or a pimp. There is no gender and there is no color. 30% of traffickers are female. I have seen the captain of the football team. We have seen businessmen. We have seen high-class people who live in really nice houses that are traffickers. So the honest answer is anybody could be a trafficker. Being aware of that. One of the biggest things we notice with traffickers, that they are master manipulators. They are so good at manipulating. And there actually is books out there to teach traffickers how to be a trafficker. Sad but true. And it teaches them how to manipulate people. It teaches them, when you look at your hierarchy of needs and what you need to survive, when we look at that psychology class that you had and you learned about the hierarchy of needs, they have a book that mirrors that and how to manipulate people among their needs of what they need. And that's where those vulnerabilities come in at. They're always going to offer something too good to be true. They're typically going to paint this picture of this future together and fairy tale, and they will spend the money and they will groom them and make them feel like they're just wonderful, but in all honesty, it's just an act. The other thing you need to understand is it's not just girls that are trafficked, and that is a big misconception. Boys are trafficked just as much as girls are trafficked, and boys actually they can make more money on a boy than they can a girl, and so they're a high commodity. It is not just females that are trafficked. It is boys and girls. And just knowing that, typically what we see with these traffickers is there is going to be a charismatic personality. They're going to draw people to them. They're going to be somebody that you're going to kind of maybe want to hang out with for whatever might be. It might be that they come in as a father figure because this person doesn't have a father in their lives, so they kind of play that father figure, that protector. It could be the boyfriend figure. There's a lot of different things. It could be the big sister figure or a mom figure because you don't have a mom in your life. So they're going to come in and fill some kind of void, and that's what they do first. What we typically find is, that jealous, controlling, violent personality won't come out at first. They're going to kind of be that Prince Charming or Princess Charming. Then eventually that controlling behavior is going to come out, and we see them really try to control and isolate their victim, because their goal is to cut their victim off with anybody else in their life that would say to them, well, why are you doing this? This person isn't good for you, or anybody who would speak up against them, because their goal is to make their victim think that they are the only person who truly loves them, and they are the only person who can take care of them. And when they can get them to that point, then they're going to be very easy to manipulate. So one thing I have found in doing this in the years that I've been doing this is, not all kids know what a healthy relationship is, and not all unhealthy relationships are going to necessarily lead to a trafficking situation. But what we do find is there are definitely some guidelines of what is healthy and what is not healthy, and all of the unhealthy behaviors do show themselves in a trafficking situation. So, I talk about that controlling boyfriend or girlfriend, and if anybody is trying to control you, who you can talk to, who you can hang out with, who can be your friends, those kinds of things, those are all big red flags of relationships that are not healthy. We talk about the verbally and physically violent, and what we see a lot is kids have a tendency to overlook that verbal violence, that person who's constantly talking down to them, that person who is, telling them they're too stupid, or, I don't know why you would do that, you're never going to succeed anyhow. Or, just those little snippets that are just constantly tearing at them, because traffickers will do that a lot. And what they do is they will tear them down, but then they'll be their kind of saving grace. And so we see that a lot. The physical violence, I tell my kids when I talk to them in schools, once somebody's physically violent with you once, they will never stop at once. It's usually always your fault that they've lost their temper in the first place and got that way. It will always be your fault. And it will not stop. It's always going to get worse. And that they can never love a person enough to stop them from getting physically violent, that they are going to definitely need help. The other big thing is just to know that they have a voice. Kids need to know that they have a voice and that they don't have to do anything that they are not comfortable with. And as parents, we need to let our kids have that voice. If there is a relative that a kid is not comfortable hugging, don't force your kid to hug them. Some kids are huggers, some kids are not huggers. Some kids like affection, some kids don't. Let your child determine that. Don't force your children to do something they're not comfortable with. Being aware of how our kids react, because you don't know if that family member has done something to that child or not. So just reading your children and not forcing them into things that they are not comfortable with. They should be able to have a voice, and if they're not wanting to do something, it may be a question of why don't they want to do it? Why are they pushing against this? And let them have that voice and be comfortable, because we don't want to ever put our kids in a position where somebody is doing something to them and they feel like they can't say anything. So we're going to touch on pornography. And a lot of times people are like, why did we talk about pornography with human trafficking? And the answer to that is pornography 100% fuels the human trafficking world. With the cases that we have had and the people that we have talked to, we have yet to find a buyer who does not have a pornography addiction. One statistic we saw said that 80% of buyers actually will show up with their cell phone and with a video cued and say, this is why I've bought you, this is what I want you to do to me, this is what I want. And so when we look at that, it 100% fuels the market. A lot of the videos that are out there, people are being trafficked in the videos. And one of the biggest ways we see this is with the people in the movie industry, with models and things like that. They will come to a shoot or come to a photo shoot or a video shoot thinking that they're taping scenario A or being photoshopped for scenario A. But when they get there, the director will say, no, instead we're going to do scenario B, which is much more than they bargained for. You can choose to do this, but if you don't, then I'll tell your manager that you are not willing to work in this industry and you won't work again. And so they hold that kind of stuff over them. The other thing is we do see girls and boys who are trafficked who are used in pornography quite often. They also use pornography to train the girls and boys that are being trafficked in how to act and how to behave, because, again, our Johns, the buyers, that's what they're seeing, so that's the kind of act that they want. That's how they want their people to act, is what they're seeing in the pornography videos that they watch. When we talk pornography, we have a pornography epidemic in our culture, and there are 68 million searches a day for pornography. And just to kind of give that into perspective for you, When I go into classrooms and I talk, and I ask how many people have been on Netflix and how many people have been on Amazon, pretty much every hand in the class will go up. The Twitter depends on the group of kids who I'm talking to, but pornography gets more visits on a monthly basis than Amazon, Netflix, and Twitter combined. Every 39 minutes, a new video is posted, and every second more than $3,000 is spent on pornography. The average age of exposure is between 10 and 11 years old. And so what you need to understand as a parent is the high-speed internet and the access to pornography is available 24/7 to our kids. Porn sites are very, very, very good at targeting our children, younger and younger, to get them exposed to pornography. And really, in all honesty, it's not a question of if your child is going to be exposed, it is a matter of when your child is going to be exposed. And then on the other side of that, and just looking at pornography and what it does, we see scientific research that is showing the detriments that are happening to our kids' brains with pornography. It is highly addictive. It is just as addictive as any drug that is out there. Probably, actually, they're saying even more so because of the fact that it is available 24/7. They don't have to pay for it. There is free pornography out there that they can get at all times. And so it's constantly available to them on their phones. The other thing with that is what they're finding is because kids are being exposed to it so young, and the dopamine levels that are released as they watch porn and they're continuing to click through that pornography, they are seeing, especially it starts to really manifest itself in their late teens and early 20s, that their frontal lobe of their brain is actually shrinking, and it's having effects on it because that frontal lobe does not fully develop until they're in their mid-20s. They're saying right now that frontal lobe between 24 and 26 years old is when that lobe fully develops. And because they're being exposed to this high internet pornography and they can keep clicking and getting new stuff constantly, the exposure to their brain, it is causing depression, it is causing anxiety, it's causing lethargy. Kids who don't want to go out or wanting to just stay home, don't want to engage with anybody, are having relationship issues, don't want friends, don't want to engage with anybody, because all they want to do is sit in front of their computer and watch their pornography. And then further down the road, we are seeing an epidemic with our young 20-year-olds who are having pornography-induced erectile dysfunction, and it is becoming an epidemic. Pornography is not harmless, and we are really seeing a lot. The research out there is fascinating, but it is something that as parents we have to understand that it is in our kids' face 24/7, and we have to have those hard conversations with them. Talk to them about what they're seeing on the internet. Talk to them at young ages about if you see something that makes your tummy feel funny, know that you can always talk to me. Talk to them about if they see something that, and it may not necessarily be pornography. You know, there's other things with the Momo that was out there and, you know, all the things that are on YouTube and things that happen, you know, having those conversations with your children early so that they're not shamed, they don't feel shamed, but knowing that if they see something that makes them feel funny or they see something that causes some feelings or questions in them, that there's always open dialogue, that they can come to you, that they can talk, that they don't ever have to be ashamed of something that they've seen, that, you know, they're not going to be punished because they accidentally saw something that they shouldn't have seen, but that you will talk with them through that and just have those open conversations. It's so important. When we look at social media, you can't let your kids hide under a rock and not ever let them have social media. That's not the answer because it's so much a part of their culture and what they're being raised in. But what you do need to do is have those real conversations with them. You have to talk to them about the dangers of social media. You know, I know one of the big things with Snapchat is being able to snap map, which if you don't know what that is, Snapchat, you're able to map where your friends are. Those users that you follow on Snapchat, you can go to the map, and if their location services are on, it'll tell you where they're at, which is great if you want to know where your friend is and how close they are to the school or what have you. But the other answer to that is anybody that they're friends with on Snapchat can snap map them and know where your kid is at any time. So I know as a parent and as a mother, the whole social media world can be a little daunting. It can be a little overwhelming. But parents, we have to educate ourselves. We have to be on Snapchat. We have to be on Instagram. We have to be on these sites so that we know what our kids are doing. Instagram, if you don't know this, parents, you can have a second Instagram account. So a lot of times kids will have their normal Instagram account where mom and dad know about, and then they have their Finsta, which is their fake Instagram account, and that's where they put all the pictures that they're doing the things that they don't want mom and dad to know what they're doing. So being aware of that. The way to tell if your kid has more than one Instagram account, you go into their Instagram and you look down on the bottom right-hand corner. If there is a red dot in that bottom right-hand corner underneath their little Instagram account picture, that tells you they have more than one account. So we have to be educated on social media. It is constantly changing, so to tell you specifically what app not to go to or what they do, that's research that you need to do, and you have to be educated because the kids know what's going on, and as parents to protect our children, we just have to know what's going on. So what do we do? If you suspect something, there is a national hotline for human trafficking. I always tell the kids, you can text Be Free. It's BEFREE. They're texters. It's easy for them to remember. You can text all that information. They will take down all the information you can give them, and then that will come into our local area. If it's New Bern, it will come to our local area. It will come to our local sheriff's office. You can call, and it's 888-373-7888. And so if you can just think of 3 8s, 3737, and then 3 8s, that's the phone number to call. You can always call us at True Justice International. We have an office here in New Bern and an office in Jacksonville. We will be glad to talk with you and help you answer any questions. We would love to be a resource and help out. But it is important that if you see something, to talk. If your student is in schools and they think something is going up, I have relationships with most of the guidance counselors in a lot of our schools. I've talked with them. I've been in a lot of our local schools and educated. I know that there are teachers there who can help and will help us as a resource. But it's really important to report as much as you can so that they can put all that information together and move forward on that. Some things you can do if you would like to help with us. We are a nonprofit, so we exist specifically on our donations, people who come alongside of us, also with grants and things that we get. We always take volunteers, people to come alongside. So if it's something that you would like to know more about and get tapped in, we would love to have you come be a part of us. And that is all. So I just want to thank you so much for listening. Again, I am Trisha Bryan, so you can feel free to contact me at True Justice, and I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any or to help you out in any way. Thank you very much.